Aim is quite important as it turns out, and as much as I stress that game sense is a primary component to success in Overwatch, not being able to land shots and finish off enemies is almost just as bad. Today, I'm going to break down different ways to enhance your aim by helping find your perfect settings, ways to sharpen your mechanics with various training methods, and whether or not you play a hero that is mechanically intensive, I got some good aim habits that will certainly take your game up another level. For this one, we will look at the foundational blocks to aiming and find what is comfortable for you. PC first. Initially, what you want to do if you're comfortable with your current setting and you have some experience with it, but it's still not right, not perfect for you, what I recommend you do is go and take that sensitivity and multiply it by 2. So for me, 1.75 times 2 is going to be 3.5. Then you'll also take this base sensitivity and split it right in half. That's going to be 875. These are going to be the two settings that you'll input into the game, and we'll do some tests. You'll pick which one you like more, and after that, after a few more trial and errors and all that sort of stuff, calculations, then we'll arrive at your perfect sensitivity. It is important that you keep this third decimal place just for perfect math's sake. Even though you can only input 2 decimal places, you want that third one just so that your calculations when we do them is more accurate. But if you're starting fresh or are starting fresh, then what you can do is take the average eDPI of all the pro players. It's important that it's eDPI and not DPI because with the different mouse DPI, it's going to affect what answer and what sensitivity you'll get. Now, the reason why I can't give you like a hard answer for the pro player eDPIs is because it's kind of dependent on what you want. If you take the average eDPI of all the pro tanks, then it's going to be higher than a support or DPS. The other reason is that there's like 200 pro players and there's like collegiate, then you've also got like the contenders, and there's a lot. But I will help you along to find that average pro player eDPI. So doing a quick hypothetical, if pro player number 1 had 3500 eDPI and pro player 2 had 4700 eDPI, pro player number 3 had 2300, then you take the sum of those and you divide it by the amount of players that you've added up. So in my case, there's only 3 players, so I divide it by the amount of players, which is going to be 3. The answer that will give me is the average pro player eDPI, and that's going to be 3500. Now, we're not done here because we need to convert the eDPI into an actual sensitivity that you can put into game. And this is where you need to figure out what your mouse DPI is. Look it up online, find your mouse box, whatever it is. It's really important that you find your mouse DPI just because it's going to affect your answer differently. My mouse DPI is going to be 2400, so I take 3500 divided by 2400, and that will give me my sensitivity, which equals 1.458. You then take that number, 1.458, and you multiply it by 2, so that's going to be 2.916 or 7, I believe. And then you also get the low sensitivity, which is going to be 729. All right, this is now where we actually get into the testing portion of things. So I'm just going to select my low sensitivity. And as for the test, all you're trying to do is get the general feel of the sensitivity. And we really want to determine whether or not you're a wrist aimer or arm aimer. And by going to the extremes of the low and high sensitivity, you'll find that on the low side, you use more of your arm, and on the high side, you use more of your wrist. So the test can look like just target acquiring. See if you undershoot or overshoot different targets. Maybe even go to this long range bot. Ooh, okay, well, he's died. Go to this long range bot and see how well you can control the recoil from soldier. You could take this a step further and select different heroes like McCree and try out his flick shots because different heroes have different skill sets. And this is where we get into our first downside of these low sensitivities, is that if I play a hero like Doomfist, it's really hard for me to like turn around really quickly, and Doomfist kind of requires that as one of his sensitivities to be very high. So I'm just going to switch that right now to 3.5. Immediately, I feel that I have no control, but I'm more able and more freely able to look around, which is what I enjoy a little bit more. And that's the whole balance of this like sensitivity. Oh boy, I can't control anything. So I enjoyed the 3.5 a little bit more because I know that with a lower sensitivity, it's not as comfortable, and through a long gameplay experience, I don't want my arm to get super tired. So what I'm gonna do is cross off this 875. From there, we just wanna find the average of these two numbers. So 1.75 plus 3.5. We bracket those because my teacher will be happy. And then we divide it by 2. And that will give us an answer of 2.625. And this now becomes our new base sensitivity. All right. So we'll write that out, 2.625. And then we'll have 3.5 as the remaining. And then 1.75 now replaces the 875. So now we test 1.75 and 3.5 again. Back into the testing, and just to mix things up, so I'm not used to a 3.5 or something like that, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to go 1.75, and we'll do the exact same test. Did those tests, didn't really like 3.5, so we do the exact same thing. 1.75 plus 2.625. Divide that by 2, and that will give us a sensitivity output of 2.188. Then again, you move that guy to the base, you do the exact same test. 1.75 you test out, 2.625 you test out. You should do this process a minimum of 4 or 5 times, but you can also go a little bit more and go 7, 8, 9, 10 times, doesn't really matter. I know from personal experience, because I did the exact same test as this, doing practice range will get you close to finding your perfect sensitivity, but it's not like the real feel of a quick play or a competitive match. When I plugged in my settings into a quick play game, it was too slow for my liking, so I incrementally increased it from 1.6 to 1.9. 1.9 was too jittery, so I went 1.9 and downgraded to 1.8. And I did this change, maybe I went to like 1.65 and then maybe 1.7 and then so on until I found 1.75. And although I do believe in doing these incremental changes, there's no such thing as a perfect sensitivity, because a perfect sensitivity is something that is developed through muscle memory. The trial and error process eliminates a lot of the other possibilities, but when you get down to like these closer numbers like 1.6 and 1.9, in between here is relatively close, and if you just stick to your settings, then that's going to be your perfect sensitivity. And for console, I'm going to give a quick rundown of how each setting affects your aim, starting off with the 3 aim techniques, and I'll give my personal experience to maybe influence your decision for what aim technique suits you. Starting off with linear ramp. Linear ramp is a straight line that correlates to the position of the thumbstick in a 1-to-1 ratio. So as you move your joystick away from the dead zone, your player will turn accordingly. The pro of linear ramp is that it feels very intuitive and very natural to make flick shots, so when I was a Hanzo main and Widow main, I felt it was really reliable to make those flick shots. The con, however, is that as I transitioned into a soldier and wrecking ball player, the tracking was kind of poor. That's due to the fact that linear ramp is a straight line and doesn't have an initial curve, which is why linear ramp feels jittery. For exponential ramp, as the joystick moves away from the dead zone, your turn speed will increase exponentially. So at the beginning it will be 1 times speed, then as you move further from the dead zone, 2 times speed, 4 times speed, etc. The positive of exponential ramp is that it does have that initial curve, making tracking more feasible. The negative is that I felt it was very inconsistent when I use the aim technique, because as you're trying to be precise, micro adjustments to your thumbstick, sometimes you would be on a 2 time zone and then hit a 4 time zone and your crosshair would just jerk, and I didn't really like that. And dual zone, which has 2 linear lines where the first line at the inner ring of the dead zone is less steep, which is for fine adjustments while moving your crosshair. The outer ring is a steeper ramp that serves to turn and look around faster. And this is why dual zone is the default aim technique for console. It's because it combines both of the positives of exponential ramp and linear ramp without having any of the negatives. Because of that less steep line, it makes it so that tracking is way easier since it's just a lower sensitivity. But because it is a linear line, you still have that natural feeling when it comes to flick shots. My verdict, just stick to dual zone. A lot of other games, if you transfer over from like Call of Duty and Destiny, Halo, they all have a similar aim technique to that. But again, all these aim techniques, if you have the right settings, you can make them work. As for the rest of these settings, I am basing this off of dual zone. Exponential ramp, there are definitely commonalities, but linear ramp, nothing's alike. So I'll try my best to keep you guys included. Horizontal and vertical sensitivity. This one is the most manipulatable, like you can change it as many times as you want, because as you tweak like aim smoothing or your aim assist, stuff like that, it's just going to affect your horizontal and vertical sensitivity. But generally speaking, you do want these quite high so that you're more able to turn around quickly. What aim assist does is that there's a general radius around a player so that when your crosshair is around them, there's kind of a stickiness feel as you move around that player. Adjusting it on the scale will just either give it more of a stickiness or less of a stickiness. What aim assist window size does is that as you adjust it, it affects the radius of that aim assist stickiness. On the higher side, aim assist will kick in much earlier, and on the lower end, aim assist will kick in much later. What I do, I keep my aim assist window size to 90. There's no reason to have it super high up, especially as a Widow player. If you're scoped in, some random enemy will walk right in front of you and misalign your shot. The function of aim assist ease in is that it gives aim assist more of a gradient as you look onto a player with your crosshair. At a higher setting, there's more of a gradual increase to the aim assist effect, whereas on the lower setting, it's more immediate. You want to keep this 50 or below. Aim smoothing. Now this is going to be the most critical setting because it's really going to affect how your settings actually feel. Aim smoothing will take points on your ramp and try to smoothen and deepen them. I keep this one to 90 or greater than that number. Linear ramp, you want to keep this one to 0. Aim ease-in is the aim smoothing for linear ramp. You want to keep this one roughly 50. It all depends on your horizontal and vertical sensitivity. If you have a lower horizontal and vertical sensitivity, let's say like 40, then you want your aim ease-in to be way lower, like 10 or 20. But if you have a really fast sensitivity like 70 and 70, maybe you want like 60. And dual zone and exponential ramp, just keep this one low, like 5, or just off. When it comes to console settings, I already alluded to this. Every hero can have different settings depending on what favors their playstyle, i.e. more flick orientated like Cassidy, tracking long range like Soldier, or close range like Tracer, fast turning required like Doomfist, and then tanks or people that don't really have, like, aren't mechanically intensive, maybe default them to a higher sensitivity because it's always better to look around with ease. Simply practicing one way is not going to round out the other components to having godlike aim. Different modes or drills will help develop specific areas of your aim like speed, precision, flicking, tracking, reaction speed, and much more. The one thing I will start off with is Aim Lab. You may have heard of it, but it really is the place to strengthen your aim mechanics. Modes like Spider Shot, which works on your flicking capabilities, Grid Shot tests your speed as you move your mouse around shooting at each target, so accuracy 2. Sphere Track, which is a mode where you track a sphere going 360 degrees around you, so definitely tracking is a point, but I found out as the sphere goes everywhere that I'm forced into awkward positions, and so being efficient when I reset my mouse was part of it. And Line Trace. I could see a lot of people who take these modes, see the leaderboard, and go, I want to get as many points as possible. What you have to remember is that this is practice, and to me, accuracy and getting the fundamentals down is more important than the score. Back to Line Trace. The line turns green when your crosshair is within it, and you can see how efficient my crosshair movement is by the accuracy percentage. All I'm doing here is trying to see how fast I can hit these targets, but if you notice, the path my crosshair takes is kind of wavy and not in a straight line. I do manage to get a higher score than on this run, where I'm more deliberate and thorough with the path my crosshair takes, but the goal is to train my brain to make straighter lines when I move my mouse, so that later when I go in-game, I develop muscle memory and what happened in practice translate into the game. For something that you all can do, we look towards the Overwatch Workshop. My favorite of these, and honestly is a slight knockoff to Aim Labs, is this aim trainer. You could do Sphere Frenzy, which is like Grid Shot, where you practice your overall aim efficiency. Set these spheres to different sizes if you want to practice for precision, like headshots, or general speed with bigger spheres. Also recommended that you set this mode to endless because you can stop whenever and see your accuracy using the little widget thing. Then there's Flying Heroes, which you could do some tracking practice, drag shots with Hanzo, whatever. And you got some other modes, but those are the two major ones. Practice Range 2.0 is another workshop I use a lot for kind of all around purposes. You can press to interact on these buttons to spawn different bots like this Pharah, dealing with a small hitbox tracer blinking around, testing your timing skills with Genji deflecting, Mei coming out of Ice Block, and Reaper teleporting, among other things. You can also create your own custom games if you go into the game browser, say create, and we're going to use the training bots as our target practice. I'm just going to set them in a medium, doesn't really matter. Team 2, 6, and recommended, this is what you'll get. So it's going to be random every time. Then you go into settings, you go heroes, and this is where all the magic happens. You can go into general, select team 2 because that's important that you're not like adjusting your stats, you want to adjust the enemy stats. You can also adjust their cooldown time, so if you want them to have their cooldowns less frequent, then you can turn them up or turn them down. Their ultimate generation, or even if they get it. And the stuff that I usually tweak is the damage dealt. I put that to 0 or 10, and that way as I'm playing, I'm not like dying to 6 enemies really quickly. You can go a little bit specific, go into Cassidy, and you can just say, you know what, I don't want to deal with flashbang, I don't want to deal with CC, so you turn that off. For team 2, I should say. You can also go to the hero that you're practicing with. Let's just say it's Tracer, go team 1, and say like blink cooldown, maybe I want that 50%, not exactly 0, because you want to still have the challenge of blinking around enemies and evading them. Recall, exact same thing. Maybe you want your ultimate pulse bomb to be more active so you can test out your like blinks, combos, whatever. Health way up so that you don't die. Damage received, you put that down low. And yeah, you got all these settings that you can choose from. And when it's all said and done, you can go save preset and you can just go practice time. And then you create new. And then you go into your presets so that every time you want to practice, you hit practice time, it resets your settings, and then you can go right into the game. Once you're in game, just go show lobby, say start game mode, and you can see the effects of all the changes that I've made because my ult is already active. My blinks seem to come online really quick. And then as I get to the enemies here, farming them up. I think I've got that headshot thing still set on. That's why I can't really do any damage. Yeah, until I hit the crit box. Ah! Hello. Some other lobbies you can join to have a good warm-up is on a paintball, aim arena, and 1v1 arena, just to name a few. Even choosing any of the arcade modes because they are typically based around whoever has better mechanics, especially a deathmatch. And probably one of the most reliable ways to warm up is queuing for quick play. If you want the most legitimate experience to how a competitive game feels when players to an extent plays as a team and moves and dodges, that's the place you want to be. I will challenge you when you play these modes that you pick a hero based on the thing that you want to get better at. For me, this is getting better at flick shots and drag shots. So for my hero pick, it's going to be McCree, or I meant Cassidy. And as long as I don't abuse the flashbang for kills, it forces me to use these types of shots. Over time, with repeated practice, eventually you learn and develop muscle memory, and suddenly you can pick up that hero and perform. There are important principles to aiming in FPS games where not applying them will put you at a distinct disadvantage against players who are applying them in higher ranks. The first one is for the lazy aimers, crosshair placement. A lot of players I see, even my teammates who are in Masters, look at some arbitrary object or just in the direction of where they're going. This is a problem when you need to react to an enemy or teammate on your screen. By placing your crosshair in a location in anticipation of or in preparation of, bogs down on the inconsistency that you get when you'd have to react to a target. For every sniper-like hero, this applies. You wouldn't place your crosshair away from a doorway because trying to flick to land your shot is way more inconsistent. You would line up your crosshair when an enemy might appear, and if we can all agree that these micro flicks are more reliable than the long flicks, then this technique is superior. Now take this to every other hero, and when you move past a doorway or corner, you always lead your crosshair head level in anticipation of whatever target you'll see. Although you don't have to be as strict as CSGO or Valorant, checking every corner and going full SWAT mode, proper crosshair placement will go a long way in enabling you to land your shots more consistently. In addition to this, we have to talk about crosshair movement. Like mentioned before, these flicks are wildly inconsistent, and unless you can land them like Ons, Pine, ML7, or any other highly rated player, it's better to utilize flicks in a different way. I'm not saying flicks are unnecessary because you can't always predict where an enemy might be with your crosshair placement. At some point you will have to react to what's happening on the screen, but you don't have to flick directly to your target. You can flick to an enemy, and the key part here is to reset your mouse, take your time to discern how the enemy is moving, and then line up your crosshair or micro flick to then pull the trigger. This all happens really fast, but as you can see from my POV, I do these long flicks to get my crosshair in comfortable range with my opponent and do a second movement to lock onto the enemy before firing. This can be taken to the extreme if you have ever watched one of Arge's aim guides where he does the exact same thing with absolute precision. I can never have the combine to do something seemingly slow while under pressure, I'm just too frantic, but his aim technique is having his crosshair relatively near his target, then with good muscle memory and a short drag shot, landing the headshot. The most painful experience for what I like to call the jittery aimers is missing the easiest shot against an unassuming enemy. People will panic to land that shot, maybe think it's the best opportunity and only opportunity to get that kill because they're either going to dodge, move away, but in reality, the reason enemies start to dodge is because you shot at them in the first place. Take note of what your opponent is looking at. If they are looking somewhere else, even scoped in, take your time to line up the crosshair when you can. Don't rush these shots. The last aim principle I have is trigger discipline. Have you ever ran out of bullets as you were just about to finish off an enemy? Well, in comes the careless aimers. These guys aren't focused on where the crosshair is placed, and while you could fix this issue by practicing your mechanics and never missing a bullet, you can also solve this issue by being cognizant of where your crosshair is directed at in relation to the target you're shooting at. What I mean is, when that hit marker becomes more infrequent as you shoot, let go of the trigger, reset, acquire the target again, and begin to shoot. The theory here is doing the spray and pray is going to shoot more bullets per second, but if you miss a majority of them, then it's going to result in a slower time to kill, and if you have to reload, you might miss your chance. Now, if you spare your ammo, so less bullets per second, but you hit a majority of them, then it's going to be a faster time to kill. This is recognizing that the person I'm trying to kill is out of my crosshair, so I'm just going to let go of the trigger so that I can deal the damage to finish them off. Consistency is key in any competitive setting because as a player, you have to maintain a high level of performance over the many games you play. Picking your most comfortable settings, sticking to them, training your mechanics, plus dedicating time to developing muscle memory. And developing good habits with those 3 aim principles are all aspects of becoming better at aiming. Popping off with one game with 70% accuracy, then dropping to 20 is not going to bode well for you, because with consistency equals climbing.